All right, guys. Good morning to you. We're here November 15th, mid-morning, and a good time to take a look at Bitcoin here. We've got a couple of interesting things developing here and maybe a few things to learn as well. So one of the things that I always encourage certainly my members to do, and anyone watching this, if you're trying to apply Elliott Wave to what we're seeing here in Bitcoin or in any crypto, it's always a good idea, particularly on the longer term charts, to have an alternate count, right? So, you know, an Elliott Wave count and a projection forward based on that count is always, as I like to say, just a potential roadmap. And the advantage of using Elliott Wave is that we get a rule set that is based on historical precedent of patterns that we know repeat consistently in the market. So we can qualify or disqualify, or as Elliott would say, invalidate wave counts based on what we see in this rule set. So when you're analyzing a market, we will immediately be drawn to perhaps the easiest count, what makes the most sense to us when we first look at it. And so you project forward with the roadmap that you are anticipating. But if the market doesn't follow that roadmap and turn at the critical points where you would expect it to turn per your roadmap, well, then you have to consider an alternate. What else could be happening where you can still maintain the validity of the count, but be prepared for an alternate outcome? So that's I guess a long-winded way of saying the market is going to surprise you constantly, and it's definitely not the norm for the market to do exactly what you're anticipating, right? So you have to be prepared so that you're not surprised, and that rule set keeps discipline in your money management, because it gives you a clear point where you're wrong, or your primary count is wrong, and now you've got to go consider your alternate count. So I want to go through that process with you so I can help you identify this so you get in that habit, particularly something like Bitcoin, where it's so volatile, and we have to be prepared for different outcomes. And particularly because, one, we're seeing a lot of, for us in the States, we're seeing a lot of activity overnight. We're seeing a lot of volatility on weekends. So, you can't, you can't, rest for a minute. You've constantly got to be applying your mind power to this to say, what could be happening? What do I think is happening? Well, if this isn't happening, what's more likely to be happening? So let's go through that process. So this is the 4-hour chart on Bitstamp that we've been using as a reference. Now, this is the primary count that we've been working from, really since this whole bull move started here. And in that primary count, when we saw this corrective action here, we made the assumption that the fifth wave of this in blue here, this 5-wave structure, was completing the 5-wave structure here in white, the larger degree. So as I always will tell you, it's waves within waves within waves within waves, right? So on a 4-hour, you go down to the 1 hour, and then the 15-minute, and the 5-minute, and then the 1 minute. There are going to be wave divisions within each of those time frames. So this was the assumption per the primary count, and it remains the primary count, that we have a fifth in here to complete this entire bull move here, this entire impulsive wave. First leg down, it subdivides into 5, which is why we've been operating on the assumption that 5 is in, and this is our A wave. If that's an A wave, the expectation is now we correct it in a 3-wave B wave. But we know that B wave is going to subdivide into an ABC of its own. And within that ABC, we're going to have subdivision yet again. So we'd have a 5-wave structure within that C wave. And that's what we're seeing. Now, we also know, per Elliott rule set, that a B wave can and often will retrace up to, I mean, it can go beyond the top, but it's not uncommon for it to go between the 618 and the 786. That's a common extreme for a B wave. Now, it can continue to go. We can get an expanded flat. That wouldn't invalidate this count. It just becomes a process of probabilities. What's more likely given the price action that we're seeing when we start to go down to the smaller degrees? So this remains a very valid count that we're just putting in a very an extended C wave relative to the A wave. So if you measure that, let's just look at it. Let me open this up so you can see a little bit better. I'm going to take the trend lines off here just so it's easier to see. So from high to low, we're still not to the 786. So this count, perfectly valid. We could easily end up turning up here and head down here for a C wave. I mean, here's the critical pivot that I've talked about before. Here's the wave one high. So if you've probably seen this in prior videos. So if we take out this wave high, this fifth wave here, this pivot, I'll call it here, then we're going to be modifying this count rather dramatically and all the way out to the daily. So this still remains a strong contender as our likely outcome here. But that remains to be seen. So let's look at the relationship here, because we've now measured the relationship from our A wave and potentially putting in a B wave. Well, let's look for some subdivision there into this three-wave structure here. So if I pull from my low here of that A to this A and go here, okay, well, we are right in that pocket range between the 1618 and the 175. Now, that's a common target for a third wave if we're looking at an impulse, but also a C wave relative to an A wave. So this could certainly be the C wave extension that could cap our B wave before we start going down into a C wave. Well, now how would we know? How would we have some confirmation that we've got a top in here? Well, we would need to see in that C wave a 5-wave subdivision. Right? That's the only way we can qualify it. That's the only way we can know that we have a solid pivot here if we start to move impulsively heading down. Then we can confidently label this as the B wave and be confident that that is confirmed as a B wave. Until then, again, this is just a possible roadmap. And as I've mentioned, the B wave, we could double top here. We could go up to the 2618 here relative to the A wave and get an expanded flat. A, B before heading down. All possible scenarios here that wouldn't invalidate any count. Right now, all we can see is here we're in that high probability window between the 1618 and the 175, and we're getting a little resistance here. And we're not to yet the 786. So this potentially plays right to script coming down for a C wave. All right? So you get a sense of where we are. Now let's go look at it on a smaller degree. Let's go to the hourly and see if we can make sense of it here. Okay, so coming down to the next degree. Again, we've been operating on the assumption that that 5 is in, and you see this nice clear subdivision, which is why we, in our initial analysis, consider this to be an A wave because of the 5-wave subdivision. We get a 3-wave subdivision. Okay, here's the A, B putting in some sort of extended C wave here relative to the A wave. Well, here, now I've moved over to Kraken here, so you can see on Kraken, we're right to the 786. We're also, let me just open it up here so you can see it. We're also right here now. Here's the 1618. So we're getting a little overlap here. It varies from exchange to exchange. But here on Kraken, where I've been trading this recently, you've got the 1618 and the 786. You've got a confluence zone right there. And no surprise, you're seeing some resistance. And we're getting a reaction there. So as previously mentioned, this very well could be the ABC of the B wave before we go down for a C. And as I've mentioned previously, note that from swing high to swing low. We come to the 786. We still have our negative 23 target down here and the 618 of the entire swing. So this remains a possible roadmap. Again, how do we know? We need to see 5-wave subdivision coming down towards that C wave. But let's go even to a smaller degree, because we can't be definitive about this just yet. We know this roadmap is still intact as a possible outcome. Let's go to the 15-minute. I'll show you a trade we took in the room. Okay, so let me strip some of this off here so you can see this a little bit better. Okay, so let's see, where can I make this easier for you? Okay, let's take this off. And let's take this off. Okay, so here's a trade we took in the room. Now, if you're an Elliott wave trader, right, and let me on the assumption that you don't know what's coming. In fact, I know they have this playback feature now. They've just added to TradingView. I haven't quite fussed with it yet. So this is the best I can do to recreate this. If you're an Elliott wave trader, regardless of where you think you are in the larger degree, because this potentially plays, because this, so here was the 5-wave sequence down we thought was the A. We get a nice A wave here. We get a 3-wave B, doesn't take out the low here, so I've got an A, B, and I'm anticipating a 5-wave subdivision into a C wave. All right, so knowing that, and my personal bias, I don't short Bitcoin. I just don't do it. So I'm always looking for a buy. Now, if you're an Elliott wave trader and you get a 1, 2, 3 like that, and I think let me show you again how we qualified it as a 3. From this to this to this. Okay, we go to the 2618. That's an extreme for a third wave. So we could be fairly confident here that we had a good third in relative to this 1, 2. Right, it goes just a few ticks beyond it. So a very reasonable assumption that you have your third of the 5-wave that you're expecting in that C wave. Well, given that, then we simply draw the retracement from the 2 to the 3. Let me take that off. Okay, so again, this is not rocket science, just straightforward. Here's the basics. You know, this is Elliott wave for dummies. Okay, well, we retrace from the 2 to the 3, and we get a nice ABC right into the 50, right to the Vegas wave. That, you know, again, like, you have to take that trade. You do, you know, and I've said that to you before in trades that have been stopped out. But, you know, I'm going to continue to tell you that the point is not whether that trade is a winner or a loser. That's almost irrelevant. What's relevant is that you have the discipline to take that trade every single time you see it. That's the point I'm trying to get across to you. You have to take that 100 out of 100 times. I don't care what you think the count is. That's simply too good to not take. You have to, and if you get stopped out, okay, no problem. You take it again the next time, and the next time, and the next time. It's that discipline and that consistency of approach that will determine your success in the long run. If you don't take that, I mean, what are you waiting for? That, I don't know how that can get any better. That's literally right. If you opened, you know, Elliott wave basic trading, as rudimentary as you could find it, that would be the trade that they'd be showing you. It just is. There's just, you don't get it better than that. You have to take that trade. Okay, and it kind of takes its time. I was a little concerned about it over here because it looked like it might roll over. So once we got the reaction here and started to move up, in fact, you can see what we did. This is just posted in our room. We moved the stop to break even. Why take that overnight when it's getting a little soft up here? So, you know, I tell my members, hey, we're going to break even before we go overnight with it. We'll see what happens in the morning. Now, here's a nice thing to wake up to. Right to target. Here's the target off of that 50, the negative 23. Now, given that we're anticipating, per the primary count, that we're going to top here in a 5-wave of that C before we start heading down, I'm not shooting for the moon here. I just want that swing from the 50 to the algo target at negative 23, because I sure as hell know the algos bought it there. So, bang, okay, good morning. First cup of coffee. Thanks very much. That's a $700 move. Okay, so we complete that. So now looking at this here, we're to and through the algo target. So now we start measuring for potential turns, pivots. I'm not saying short it here. I'm saying, well, if it's going to go through that, where is the next likely turn? So let's pull that off just to not clutter the chart. So given that, I'm going to take my 1 wave and I'm going to project it from what I now know is my 4 wave. And look where we go. We're a couple of ticks from the 2618, and that's where we start to turn. Now, is that the top? Well, we don't know yet. Let me take this off. But that doesn't surprise me that we're starting to see resistance up here at that level. Right? It's 2618 of the 1 projected from the 4. This is just textbook Elliott trading. Now, is that the top? Well, we don't know. But that certainly isn't happening by accident, that we're getting resistance at the 2618. That's an extreme for the 5th relative to the 1st. So do we start now the correction? Well, we don't know yet. But that tells me that we have potentially a completed 5-wave structure. And you can see the subdivision within it. So we've got a 1, 2, 3, 4. Potentially that's the 5. Or we also have the possibility that this could retrace and go up one more time. So let's look at that count. So we could have 1, 2. This could be the 3. Well, we could have 3, 4, 5. That would make sense relative to this 261. But again, because we want to be prepared for any other outcome, we could have this. We could have the 3 in there. Now, so if that's the case, right? So that would be our 3. We can measure it and say, what's the probability of that? If I take my 1 wave, project from my 2, oh, isn't that interesting? That's right to the 1618, 175 pocket, the most likely target for a 3rd wave. Do you see that? And then, of course, if you've got 3 pivots, we're going to put a pitchfork on it. Does that help me? Well, I've got the shift on there. Let me go to original. And this is what you would do. You'd go over here and say, okay, let's go to original. Maybe. Let's go to the modified shift. Maybe. So if that's the case, let's put the 2 on there. Okay, that could play. So what am I expecting now? I'm expecting a return to the median line. So if that's a 3rd, and I'm going to get a 4th, well, again, just like we did here, we're simply going to take the 2 wave to the 3rd wave, potential 3rd wave, and we're going to look for the next buy here. What's the most likely target for a 4th wave? Between the 38 and the 50, which would be right here at the median line. So potentially for Bitcoin bulls, here's a buy here. Now, note, we get a target, we get an algo target, we get a clear stop that would be consistent with this wave 1 high. If that breaks, then this is likely topped. Then it ends up being, see, if that breaks and you get stopped out there, which is certainly possible, then you go back and you can relabel it and say, okay, there's the 3, 4, 5 of the 5th of the C wave. Does that make sense? Do you see that? It's always waves within waves. We don't know yet whether or not that's top there. We got a double top. So, we can't say for sure. But for bulls, I mean, I wouldn't be uncomfortable buying it right there. I've got this nice swing pivot here for potential support, prior resistance becoming support in between the 50 and the 618. So, how would you help time it? Well, on a 15-minute, I'd like to see a little 3-wave subdivision to tell me that I'm likely coming into a 4th here, knowing that I've got, that the potential is there, that I've already topped. So this is, kind of trader's choice. I'd look for maybe a little timing with the oscillators, right? So we've had this nice volume has been coming in. We've gone up. Now we're just crossing over. I wouldn't mind seeing the oscillator get down here to 30. Maybe start to turn as we did here, as we did here, as we did here. Here, again, it's a confluence of evidence, if you will. We may stall right here at the median line, but I want to see 3-wave. I want to see this. I want to see that. I got to take that to a smaller degree. That's a little ridiculous. Let's put the wave on it so you get the idea. Okay, so we want to see something like that. Then I get more confident in that. Just like this. So it's the exact same thing. Again, that's what I try and tell you. It's the same thing over and over again, which is why repetition is how you learn this. Right? Seeing it 100,000 times. A, B, C. Buy it. particularly when you have this nice tag up here at the 1618 telling you high probability that that's a 3. Oh, and then we came to the 50 with an ABC. You buy that. $700 move. Now, I want to see the same thing here. Could I get the same thing? Well, it sure sets up that way. Here's a potential 4. Here's a potential ABC right there. First, so that could play beautifully. A to the median line, a push back, comes through to the outside edge of the median line, going back up to hit the algo target. That plays. That's very reasonable. Possible roadmap. That's all these are. Possible roadmaps. Okay, 3 would be here. We know that's the 1618 window. That would play perfectly just as we had here. We got a clear exit. We know we're wrong here if it takes that out, which happens to be a few ticks below the 65, which would be your stop anyway. Right? You see that? Okay, so this very clearly you have a potential trade here setting up, but we also, where I started all of this, you got to consider an alternate count, because if this is topped, what else could be happening? A lot of people are, in the Twitter sphere, crypto Twitter, everybody's, just wetting themselves with Bitcoin back over 7,000. Okay, does that play? Okay, all right. Well, maybe I don't know. Let's look at it. Do you have an alternate count? Well, if it is going up, how is it going to travel? What's your roadmap? Well, let's go look at an alternate count. So where did I got to find it now? I think I've got it here. Okay, so let's consider an alternate. Now, let me start here. So this, at least for me, and I think I said this, in videos of the last week or two, because look, that 30% dip. What does that take? 2 days. This pivot here always bothered me. It's not technical. The relationship in time of the 5th wave to the 1 wave, it just bothers me. It does not feel like that's the right structure to finish this entire impulsive structure, which has been incredibly technical the whole way. And then we're going to stop here, and we're not going to hit a fib number. Yeah, I got the trend line there, but I just don't feel like that's a good. I'm not finishing this whole impulsive move that's been wildly technical on a news event. Now, it could happen, but I'm suspicious of that. I remain suspicious of that as the 5th. So, okay, well, maybe we can put together an alternate that allows for a bullish scenario where that is not the 5th. Well, how could that play? All right, all I got to do is find it. I think I've got it here, yeah. Okay, let's consider an alternate. Well, so this is what we had before. We had this here. Well, if this is not a 5th, what could that be? We can pull this right down here like that, knowing that we've got that our first wave here of this structure here has been overlapped. So what does that leave? That leaves a diagonal. So if that's a diagonal, would that make sense, right? Could that play? Well, a diagonal can only be found in a 1 wave, an A wave, or a 5th wave. So if this is going to be our 5th wave, if this is going to be a diagonal, if this entire structure is going to be a diagonal, could that be a 1 wave? Well, consider that for a second. If that's a 1 wave, where's Bitcoin going? A shitload higher. How about that? If Bitcoin's going to 25,000, I'm sure you probably heard that metric that people will use. Well, if Bitcoin gets 5% of the market cap of gold, it's going to be at 25,000. Does that make sense? If this is a 1 wave at 8,000, 25,000, that makes sense. Could that play? Could this be a 5th wave before we start a much larger correction? Well, that's possible. We got a couple of scenarios. Well, if we're going to get bullish with this, if this is now going to be a 4th, how can we make that work? How does that fit without violating any Elliott wave rules? Okay, well, here's how I originally had it. This is when I was buying it here and here where I got stopped out. I thought we had an A, a B, an expanded flat in the B wave, because I get a three-wave subdivision there. So I was a buyer here and a buyer right up to that one wave. Got stopped out on both of them. Right? I mean, I was wrong, right? So that doesn't mean that you don't come back at this and go, well, wait a minute. That can still play as an ABC. It's, instead of an impulse, now I've got a diagonal. So if this is going impulsive, well, does that work, right? So if this is my third here, so I'm confident in this as a third because I've got this good subdivision to complete that third. This subdivides, I get an A wave. I get a three-wave B on that news event. There's the fork, no fork day. Boom, it comes down in a five-wave sequence. Remember, this is why we qualified it as an A wave. Well, that could certainly play as a C wave. If this is an A, this is a B, I'm expecting a five-wave C. I didn't expect it to go that deep, right? Which is why I was buying it at the 50 and the 618 right before this pivot. That was the point. That was the count that made sense on the assumption that it was going to stay impulsive and not go into a diagonal. That's why we were buyers there. Got stopped out. It happens. Okay, so if that's the ABC, well, what am I expecting now? If this 4 is in relative here, I stay above the 2. If this 4 is in, well, now I'm expecting a one wave. Well, does that work? Can I get a one wave there? Well, I sure get a nice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? Look here. Look at this. Okay, so in a one wave, we could get overlap of the 1. It overlaps it just barely, so I've got a diagonal to start my 1. Right, so I get this nice little triangle 4, 3, 4 here up for the 5. Well, we know from the prior measurements that we're at a significant pivot here. So if this is a diagonal into a one wave, what am I expecting next? This is the alternate count. Well, now if that's going to pivot there, well, now I'm expecting a two wave. And I'd be looking for that between the 3 and the 4, right here at this pivot high. So next buy opportunity, and where the algos are going to buy it, is right here at the 50. So if this is going to play as 1, 2, let's put the wave on it. If that's going to play as an impulsive move, well, there it is. Right? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going up again. We're going well through these highs, right? Which that just didn't sit right with me. I just call it, just years of doing this. So if that's our 1, here's potentially our 2. So what are we looking for? Anything here between the 50 and the 618. Here's the algo target. We'd do the same thing. We'd look for wave 3 targets. I'm going to be buying there. Yeah, so what am I looking for there to tell me that that's potentially a B wave, right? So this, you should already know this answer. So we're looking for this. Right? We're looking for 3 waves here. And I'm looking for a relationship between the A wave and the C wave to tee that up. Then I'm looking for some help from the oscillators. Can it get down that low on a 4-hour? Volume has been strong. Can it get there? Well, maybe I'm taking this down to the 1 hour to look for that oscillator turn. If that becomes a 2, where are my potential thirds for targets? Well, I've got the algo targets sitting right there. Partial profit here. Next potential target right there. Let's just map it out, right? That's all you're doing. These are just potential roadmaps. Well, it's got to go at least 100% of the wave 1. Where are the likely targets? Up here. And look at that confluence zone. Likely targets for the third is the 1618. Just as we saw previously, there's the negative 23. If that's 50 holds, there's the negative 23 of the entire diagonal. So if I scrunch this up and move this down here so you can see it, okay, there's the pull from low to high to the fit. Well, actually, you'd change this. Let me see if I can get that for you. So that would be your 3. Okay, so we're in between the 38 and the 50. Here's the negative 23. Here's the negative 618. Here's the 3, 4. Potentially, we're going up here to complete well, is it going to be leading or an ending diagonal? We don't know yet. Depends where Bitcoin's going, in 2018. If we're going up to 25,000, here's just 10,000. Can it get there? Is that a roadmap that makes sense? Yeah, I say yeah. You don't invalidate any Elliott rules by with this count. So both your primary and your alternate are potential roadmaps. You got to wait and see which one's going to play out. But that's what you've got on your hands there right now as we sit here looking at this. We don't know which one's going to play out. We can't be definitive about which one ends up playing out. Hey, welcome to the markets. That's the risk you have to take. So if are you comfortable being a buyer here? Well, in either case, at least for me, I'm looking for the buys. So whether it's primary or alternate count, I'm looking for the buys. So if the alternate is going to play here, oh yeah, I'm a buyer at the 50. I know algos are going to buy it. I'm just trying to get behind them, but I'm going to stop out at the 65 and accept that risk. So right there, I mean, just on the first target, there's just about 4-1. The 618 algo target. Well, the 100% to qualify the third, there's 5-1. The 1618, there's 8.5-1 on the alternate count. Right. So the point being, you want to get in the habit of having a primary and an alternate count so that you're not surprised, so that if one doesn't happen, you're immediately switching over to the other because now you know, okay, it's not that, it's this. And if it's not this, maybe it'll be something else. Right? You're continually adjusting the count to accommodate what you're seeing in the market. All right, let's see. How am I doing? Whoa, 30 minutes. Okay, there's a long one today. All right, I'm going to wrap it there, guys. All right.